In fact, they do better deals than Ulysses, Joyce, and what have you because they make Sean Connery's life off-screen was just as fascinating as the characters he played. The legendary actor dated widely, lived boldly, music, and rarely looked back. Yet, there was one relationship that refused to stay, music, in the past. Long after breakups, distance, and the chaos of Hollywood, one woman remained firmly in his heart. Their story didn't follow a simple path, and for years, it unfolded far from public view. But when Connery finally spoke about the woman he could never quite forget, it revealed a deeply personal chapter that few people truly understood. The untold origins, music, of Connery. Long before the world knew him as James Bond, he was simply Thomas Shaw Connery. Growing up in Edinburgh, his friends called him Tommy, though he later chose to go by his middle name, Shaw. The nickname that really followed him, though, was Big Tam, and it wasn't hard to see why. Even as a kid, Connery stood out. By the age of 12, music, he was already towering over his classmates. At 18, he had reached his full height, a solid, imposing, music, 6'2". He came from a working-class Scottish family that believed in hard work and getting on with it. His father earned a living as a factory worker and truck driver, while his mother worked as a cleaner. Money was tight and everyone chipped in. Sean learned that lesson early. Before he even turned 16, he was up in the wee hours of the morning delivering milk around Edinburgh. From there, the jobs never really stopped. What did stop, at least for a long while, was any clear sense of where his life was headed. Connery also developed a reputation as Allardyce's man at a very young age. Years later, he openly admitted that he lost his virginity at just 14 to a woman who served in the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the women's branch of the British Army during World War II. That early encounter would leave a bigger impression on him than he realized at the time. Although he was too young to fight in the war, Connery was eager to serve. The moment he turned 16, he joined the Royal Navy. He embraced the life completely, even getting 2 tattoos almost right away. One dedicated to his family, the other reading Scotland forever. At an age when most teenagers were still figuring themselves out, Connery was already a fully grown tattooed sailor. He trained at gunnery school and served on an anti-aircraft crew, throwing himself into the routine and discipline of military life. For 3 years, it looked like the Navy might be his future. Then suddenly, it was over. Connery developed a painful duodenal ulcer, and the condition forced the Navy to medically discharge him. Still barely out of his teens, he returned to Edinburgh with no clear plan and no safety net. What followed was a stretch of odd jobs that sounded almost unreal. He worked as a truck driver and a lifeguard. He polished coffins for a company called J&T Scott. He even modeled for art students at a local college. Through it all, one thing stayed constant. Music. He was obsessed with building his body. Connery became a serious bodybuilder, training relentlessly and entering competitions. But he never quite reached the top. Part of the reason was simple that he refused to give up football. While many American bodybuilders avoided other sports out of fear of losing muscle, Connery couldn't stay away from the pitch. He played for several teams, and his talent didn't go unnoticed. Then came the offer of a lifetime. At 23 years old, a working-class kid from Edinburgh was invited to play for Manchester United. For most players, that would have been the dream ending. Connery was thrilled, but only briefly did he did the math in his head and realized that football careers were short. Most players peaked by 30, and he didn't want to be left with nothing once the cheers faded. With remarkable foresight, music, he turned the offer down. Thankfully, another door was already cracking open. While training for bodybuilding contests, a friend mentioned auditions for a touring production of South Pacific. Connery went along and landed a spot in the chorus. As the show traveled, he slowly worked his way into bigger parts. For the first time, acting didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt, music, possible. The job paid the bills and introduced him to new opportunities and to romance. Connery began dating a woman named Carol Spell. For a while, it felt like something solid, but her family disapproved, music, of him, partly because of his background. They made it clear he wasn't welcome, and the relationship ended abruptly. The heartbreak, music, hit hard, and worse troubles were waiting just around the corner. Connery had grown up around hardship and street violence, but one night in particular would cement his reputation across Edinburgh. It began in a pool hall when members of the feared Valda gang tried to steal his jacket. Everyone in the city knew who they were. They were notorious for sewing razor blades into their clothing, a brutal tactic designed to slice open anyone who tried to grab them. Connery refused to back down. The gang followed him to his job at the Parlor Dons, where 6 of them cornered him on an upper balcony. Their intention was clear. Hurt him badly always. What they didn't expect was music, Connery's strength. He trained regularly at a weightlifting hall and knew exactly how to fight. After a brief exchange of blows, he grabbed 2 of the men, one in each hand, music, and smashed their heads together. The other 4 fled. From that night on, no one bothered him again. Their encounter earned him the respect of the city's most dangerous gang and sealed his image as a genuine hard man. Off thou streets, Connery was surprisingly studious. Determined to become a serious actor, he spent his nights reading Shakespeare, Ibsen, and Tolstoy. He took elocution lessons to soften his thick, music, Edinburgh accent. He was reshaping himself inside and out. Even so, music success came slowly. The 1950s were a grind. Connery accepted whatever work he could find. Small theater roles, bit parts in films, minor television appearances. To survive, he even took on babysitting jobs. Casting directors eventually noticed his rugged presence and began offering him roles that matched it. Boxers, laborers, truck drivers. Then came his music, first real breakthrough. Connery landed a leading role opposite Hollywood star Lana Turner in Another Time, Another Place. On screen, they played lovers off-screen. Tabloids went wild, convinced the chemistry was real. Photographers followed them to upscale London restaurants, fueling rumors of an affair. There was a serious problem. Turner was dating Johnny Stompanato, a volatile mob enforcer tied to crime boss Mickey Cohen. His relationship with Turner was already toxic and violent. When gossip about Connery reached him, Stompanato exploded. He threatened Turner's life and flew to London, intent on confronting Connery. Despite Turner's pleas to stay away, Stompanato showed up at the film studio and walked in on a romantic scene being shot. According to reports, he pulled a gun on Connery. Connery didn't hesitate. He grabbed Stompanato's wrist, disarmed him, and knocked him to the ground with a single punch. Police were called, and Stompanato was deported back to the United States. Not long after, the story took a tragic turn. Stompanato was killed during a violent argument with Turner. Her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbed him while trying to protect her mother. A coroner's jury later ruled the act justifiable homicide, and Crane was released after only weeks in juvenile detention. The mob didn't accept the ruling. They believed someone had to pay, and rumors once again pointed toward Connery. Mickey Cohen himself allegedly called Connery while he was staying at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, issuing a blunt warning, "Leave town or die." Connery understood the danger. His career was finally gaining traction, and he had just signed a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox. He chose survival. He quietly relocated to the San Fernando Valley, music, and stayed out of sight until the situation cooled. Looking back, Connery later admitted he had no interest in testing the mob's patience. He stayed hidden, kept working, and waited for the storm to pass. Unaware that just around the corner, the role that would define his life was waiting, the choice that changed everything. Sean Connery never quite fit the mold of smooth, polished leading men dominating Hollywood at the time. He came across more like a rough diamond, rugged, raw, and still a little unpolished around the edges. Most of the time, that rebellious charm worked in his favor. But when he first met photographer Julie Hamilton, it had the opposite effect. She later admitted she found him downright off-putting. Then something unexpected shifted everything. One day, Hamilton saw Connery dressed in a traditional Scottish kilt, proudly embracing his heritage. The transformation was instant. The same man she had dismissed suddenly struck her as incredibly striking. From that moment, her opinion flipped completely, and she soon described him as the most handsome man she had ever seen. Connery, who had already been deeply drawn to her, finally saw his feelings returned. The two quickly built a life together, settling into a modest London flat, meeting each other's families, and forming a strong partnership. As Connery worked tirelessly to establish himself as a serious actor, Hamilton became his greatest supporter. Their relationship was built on mutual loyalty, something that would soon be tested in a major way. In 1960, Hamilton was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a frightening and potentially deadly illness at the time. Almost simultaneously, Connery received the kind of opportunity actors spend their entire careers chasing, a major role alongside Charlton H. in the historical epic El Cid. It was the sort of part that could instantly launch him into stardom. Connery faced an agonizing decision between music, career advancement, and personal devotion. In the end, he chose to remain by Hamilton's side, turning down the high-profile role to support her through recovery. It was a massive professional risk, but surprisingly, the gamble paid off. The industry did not blacklist him, and he was eventually given another opportunity, reinforcing the idea that his career would not be destroyed by putting love first. To outsiders, Connery and Hamilton seemed destined for marriage. They were widely viewed as one of Hollywood's most promising couples, but their relationship unraveled in an unexpectedly quiet and uncomfortable moment. According to Hamilton, the turning point came while they were relaxing in bed. Without warning, Connery casually praised the eyes of actress Diane Sento, whom he had been working with on a television production and who was still married at the time. Hamilton immediately sensed something had shifted. She confronted him directly, and Connery responded with blunt honesty, admitting that his feelings for her had faded. The relationship ended almost instantly, bringing a sudden close to what many believed was a lasting romance. Years later, they would meet again under very different circumstances. Hamilton had moved forward with her life, marrying and having a son named Jason. During their reunion, Connery made a deeply personal promise, telling her that if he ever had a son, he would name the child Jason, as a tribute to her support during his struggling years. Connery's growing relationship with Diane Sento introduced complications, particularly because she was still married. However, it also placed him in the right environment at the right moment. Sento introduced him to producer Harry Saltzman, who was attempting to accomplish something unprecedented: bringing Ian Fleming's James Bond novels to the big screen. Landing the role was far from guaranteed. Fleming himself strongly disagreed with the producers about who should portray Bond, favoring a more refined and traditionally suave actor. The studio initially pursued Cary Grant, but negotiations collapsed when Grant refused to commit to more than one film. While producers envisioned a long-running franchise, desperate to find their lead, the filmmakers even organized a public talent search, selecting a winner who ultimately lacked the